Team Gravity presents Fight Night.
Y'all ready for this?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Tournament of Champions brought to you by Team Gravity Fight Night. My name is Fear Dragon, once again joined by Jack Attack, and we're going to be jumping into our next series for the night. It is going to be aLive versus FanTaSy. And Jack Attack, what a time to be alive. I feel like I'm living in a fantasy right now, watching these two players.
Absolutely. A live version of versus FanTaSy is something that I've always been interested in viewing because versus FanTaSy is something I've always seen in VODs. So a live versus FanTaSy will be quite nice, indeed.
And we should be jumping into the series relatively shortly. We got some cool maps already going to be played. Unfortunately, it's not. It's a cool map starting off. Moonlight Madness for map number 1 and game number 1. But I was a little bit sad because they've already struck two of my favorite maps: Dash and Terminal and Bridgehead. The most balanced maps in the map pool. And
everyone knows actually that they're the most balanced, which is why they always get, you know, especially in a mirror matchup where balance is super important. They decide, the balance maps, let's get rid of those and move on to the IMBA maps only. Yeah, Bridgehead is one of those maps where it's just like really weird. You can do crazy early game two-pronged attack things that you can't do in any other map that are really, really fun. But most people don't like Bridgehead. Most people, I should say, most pro gamers don't tend to like Bridgehead, regardless of what race they are for some reason or another.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah,
it is. You know, you said like
really
it's always the troublemaker map. These are like the extreme troublemakers that don't even like get to hang out with the other kids. Like that's the kind of level that we're looking at here.
These are the troublemakers that are actually just constantly in a state of being suspended from school. So like you have the troublemaker that gets put in timeout, and then you have the troublemaker that never gets to be put in timeout because he's always suspended. That's what Dash and Terminal and Bridgehead are. But we aren't going to be seeing any kind of crazy, like weird situations on Dash Terminal or Bridgehead. We still have an opportunity to see some funky, cool stuff, though, on Moonlight Madness, because it's still a nice map, still has that kind of backdoor area where you can take a potentially nice and close by third expansion, but I've seen a lot of trouble, especially in matchups where you can end up finding a lot of like that aerial harassment from, say, Terran players who are dropping, and you could where positioning is very important. That's one of the key things. Matchups where positioning is very important. I've seen a lot of players start to drift away from taking that backdoor third expansion just because you just funnel your army moving between your natural and that third. It's such a long walk between the two, and oftentimes you'd rather just take maybe a slightly more far away third, but positionally it can be easier to always be in position to defend it.
Yeah, very tricky map, very fun map, and I think that that's probably what I liked most about this most recent map pool is they're really shaking it up, and you can't even veto out all the different weird maps. Like they actually get played because there's more than 2 of them. You know, Terraform we were talking about before, really different, mixing it up. Moonlight Madness is actually, you know, my favorite new map. Just so many different alleyways and pathways and destructible rocks and options for positioning, especially in a TVT. And like you said, a lot of airspace for harass, for, you know, 1-1-1 openings for banshees and things like that.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this is going to play out, because we have a couple of statistics about the sort of play styles and these sort of unit compositions that each of these players tend to go for. I'm going to ask you about that in a second, Jack Attack. But I want to say Moonlight Madness is a map that has a lot of choke points, as I think you kind of mentioned, a lot of different alleyways and different attack paths, and I think that's going to definitely lend itself towards certain play styles. So, Jack Attack, I'm kind of curious, like we have some of the statistics from Spawning Tool. What are the sort of play styles that both these players tend to go for? And actually,
well, officially from, you know,
I was gonna say
I
we
think
could
you're
probably
right. I
introduce
know
the
it.
players first.
You know, we could introduce their stats, or we can introduce who the hell they are, and probably who the hell they are is not really necessary because you probably should already know that spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of our screen It is the Titan, the terrorist Terran of Brood War, come alive again in StarCraft 2. Give a warm welcome to the Blue Terran, FanTaSy.
And his opponent spawning up here in the top right-hand corner of the map is the red Terran player. It is going to be the one and only aLive, representing Team Spinu.
Yes, Spinu is the company of shoemaking variety. Very nice to be making shoes. I heard they're quite trendy. I'm not a trendy shoe wearer myself. Fear Dragon, you? How trendy are your shoes? Are you up to date with the latest shoe fashions?
My shoe fashion is not at the top level. I still just wear good old Vans and go for that skater style. But you know what? I've watched enough GSL and SSL that I've seen that Spinu ad so many times, and all I know is that very attractive Korean woman will like me if I wear Spinu shoes, and also I can make water appear from nothingness if I wear Spinu shoes. Whenever I move, just water will appear and flash around. So
that
aLive
is
pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, Korean women.
He's basically a waterbender from Avatar.
That's amazing. That all comes just from the shoe. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Spinu Splash.
I've heard of shoes that can are comfortable, and that's really cool. But my shoes really can't compete. We do have a game of StarCraft, a couple of gas firsts opening up, and gas first into 1-1-1 is what aLive plays for 50% of his games. Now it says games. Is that games? Games or is that TBTs? Because if that was games, that would be quite extraordinary.
I imagine that it's probably for TVT.
Yeah.
But actually, now that I think about it, gas first not like the most ridiculous thing to open in all of your matchups, right? Like TVZ, let's open with gas first. Probably you're not opening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on.
It's
now
tough.
I'm reconsidering what I'm saying.
It's tough.
But I will say
I'll take that challenge.
1-1-1.
I'll hop on the ladder and just start gas firsting everything. Just try to make it happen. That would be like a fun little thing. You have to gas first week.
You're gonna hate it when you hit me, because I'm like the Protoss player that's like, I'm gonna punish the one Terran player out there, like the one of 70 that still goes for like those kind of greedy openings, and I chrono boost out my Zealot and send it across the map to try and do damage. Like, oh man, you'll hate me. But 1-1-1 openings over here from both the players, it completely mirrored and identical builds to almost a ridiculous degree. Very impressive to see like that kind of level of refinement. But I will say that 1-1-1 openings are just so unbelievably common. We're starting to see the deviation though here. Widowmine coming out over here for FanTaSy, and instead just additional Hellions coming out for aLive. We might be seeing drops from both sides, but what they do with them and what's going to be in them is going to differ.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the advantages of going for this unit composition, is that you don't have to build any add-ons at all. So as soon as your structure is built, you can just go ahead and keep cranking out those units, which is, it allows you to have a little bit more supply, a little bit faster, and hit those timings a little more cleanly.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and with that early medevac tech, that definitely maybe brings in some consideration about like where the expansions are, and going back into the map Moonlight Madness, how annoying it can be to try and defend those multiple locations. But Vikings coming out for both these players immediately afterwards. We see actually that aLive gets a scout off on FanTaSy's medevac, and I think that aLive, I think both of these players have seen each other's medevacs as the medevacs pass very closely next to each other.
Yeah, he's going to go for it anyway. He's going to, they're both going to try to make it happen at the same time, but aLive looking in a much better position, only have to defend against two Hellions, whereas we do have the drop coming down. Widowmine is down, and it only gets a little bit unfortunate there. Nice splitting and killing going on over here against the Hellions. He does manage to kill one of them. Really nice micro here, splitting up, mitigating a lot of that splash damage from the Hellions. He's just going to run around now, I think, get a scout on that gas if he can. And, overall, not too much done for aLive there.
Yeah, really well done over there, using the refinery to kill off that Widowmine as well. Just saving himself a little bit of that extra scan. It's a nice little maneuver. But at the end of the day, neither of these players really doing too much damage to each other. And both of the players end up losing a majority of the units in the process of the drop. So neither of them being too successful on the offense, but both of them being successful in the defense.
Yep, and you know, that'll help us normalize out a bit into expansions, into the next time around. Ooh, this Widow Mine just barely out of range of these two Vikings that are going across to see if they can get anything done, but very clearly they can't. This is what we call defender's advantage.
Widow Mine! Boom! There goes down one
And now
Viking,
he's
the other
gonna
Viking.
follow it up.
Oh, gonna get picked off.
Excellent.
Really well done. Widow Mine stays alive for another day, but another day has passed and he gets taken out.
Wow, days are really short in this
Really
planet.
sick traits.
That's like,
Yeah,
that's
Moonlight Madness, man.
that day was, I mean, Moonlight, maybe just like the moon is just revolving around so quickly. The
Some
day is
people
just...
think that this, you know, this is like a giant planet or something. This is actually the entire planet. This map is the entire planet.
Wow. Gravitational forces must be very, very small.
Yeah, we had to include, like, you know, special rules to the players that they can't utilize the fact that, you know, planets are round and they can't just, like, move to the bottom side and, like, a Pac-Man game just end up at the top side. That would be a really cool map. Oh my god.
Pac-Man map.
Can we get a map like that?
Of course we can get a map like that. The StarCraft editor is the most powerful thing in the universe. It can do anything. We can make a Pac-Man map. Let's make it happen.
Oh my god, we're gonna make that happen another time, because for now, I'm just more focused on the fact that aLive's Hellions are not so alive, as he ends up losing all of them over that
Meantime, we
verdict.
do have a drop coming in here. Wouldn't mind getting burrowed. A little bit slow reaction, but manages to pull out. Oh, and he uses the splash damage against him. Style points for aLive there. Cleans up the drop.
Oh my god, but the stealth points are taken away as he scans everywhere but the Widow Mine.
No, that's a fantasy scan, actually.
Oh, was that a fantasy scan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
that
he
would make
actually-
more sense. I was like,
He hasn't even
gonna
tried to scan it at all. I guess he's just gonna pull when he knows the time is. Let's hope that the time is running out here. He's gonna be able to get a pretty decent hit off. Nicely done.
kills off 2 more workers.
Gets
Softens up
2
the rest of them.
little kills. I was really expecting more, but you know, that's the IMBA worker for you. The SCV has 5 extra hit points than all other workers, therefore Terran IMBA, as we all know. That's just something you gotta deal with. Yeah, especially in TVT. Terran always wins TVTs, and it's really kind of frustrating. I really wish Blizzard would fix that, you know what I mean?
Well, aLive is going to try and put on some counter harassment with his Hellion drop over in the main base of FanTaSy. FanTaSy has units, but they're not exactly in position right now, and he could end up getting some really nice
that was
work
lined up
skills
really
from aLive.
nicely. Oh my god. 10 worker
Really
kills
well done.
going down. That was a huge deal. Even using this little choke point to get some more Marine kills in there, and even gets out with practically everything alive. And attacking from the front with a Banshee and killing a siege tank. Wow. aLive looking fantastic right now, even microing around this Banshee. No cloak has been researched, but it's one of these things that you hear talked about really often, is this sort of like the really fast Banshee, okay, they're expecting it. Then you have a sort of delayed Banshee where it's like, you never really expect the Banshee. Oh yeah, this is my 12-minute Banshee time. It just kind of comes across the map randomly and, you know, catches the opponent by surprise. And 14 workers killed. aLive looking in a really great spot right now economically, and in the advantage of workers and going mech.
Nobody expects the Banshee Inquisition, as you might say, but as we end up seeing additional factories being added on, you mentioned going into that meching style, but FanTaSy really just sticking around with that bio and adding on additional barracks, has up a 3rd CC that's ready to go ahead and land, but well, aLive scouts out his opponent's 3rd CC with some Hellions that are going to be sacrificing their lives, but for the greater good.
Yeah, for the good of knowing your opponent is going mech, they hath been scouted. And, yeah, so he's got the double armory, the upgrades are coming down, he's getting blue flame, he's crossing all his T's, dotting all his I's, and he's just going to throw out, I mean, another Hellbat drop over here, and it's just sort of this tank marine style from FanTaSy. But it's a tough situation because as the bio player, you're the more mobile player, generally speaking. You're the one who has map control and can take more bases, but economically, FanTaSy's behind in worker count as well as base count.
Yeah, that's going to be very frustrating, especially when finally FanTaSy is trying to move out to put on some pressure and encountering a couple of Hellions in the middle of the map, but really it's the big Hellbat drop that's going to be going into his natural expansion that he has to be very, very scared of. especially with the Siege Tank siege up. That Siege Tank is actually just going to add in to the damage that Hellbats will be doing to the Worker lines.
Really nice reaction there, pulling off to the side. Only 2 workers killed. Excellently done, but he is moving into the next base, and he's going to get none more kills. Very low number, none.
Oh my God! Those workers going back to the mining.
Oh, if he had attacked, if he had turned around and attacked, oh my God, he still gets 4 workers for his trouble. But man, that was scary. Oh, what a ballsy move for FanTaSy. Be like, yeah, I can totally bring my all my workers back in now in front of this Hellbat. It's totally fine.
Yeah, these aren't bad conditions. We just install the sauna in our mineral line. You know, it's a benefit.
He really, really hopes that his workers aren't going to be unionized. He's going to be in big trouble.
Can you imagine mid-game, like 80 minutes into like a super duper long macro game, we're actually going to unionize, and you don't. It's like eventually Legacy of the Void. Like you can't really utilize mules as much as you used to. You're like, nope, just not mining anymore.
A huge push coming out from aLive here. Really powerful. He's got 1-1 finished up, getting a really nice spread. Ooh, but FanTaSy gets the first tank shot off here. He's gonna be able to clear out one of the tanks. No, he's not. Have that second scan.
aLive does have really, really solid air control right over here. There's not a whole lot that FanTaSy can do to contest it, just with such an overwhelming number of those Vikings. And this is pretty typical. BioPlayer generally trying to go more for those medevacs, but we might end up seeing FanTaSy trying to push into the siege tanks. He's doing okay. He picks up a lot of the siege tanks, but the Hellbats now starting to come in and trying to do that counter pressure. Oh my God, this is going abysmally for aLive.
Oh man, and he managed to go back into that base over there with a couple of Blue Flame Hellbats and gets 9 kills in the workers. That entire attack was thwarted in the end of things. However, we still have the worker count, economy count in the advantage of aLive. We still have the tank count in advantage of aLive.
Hellbats to the third! Hellbats to the third! Murdering all the SCVs! And once again,
oh my God!
The workers in. And we have how many? 20?
23.
Like 18-ish? Oh my God. 23 workers killed.
Yeah, it's 47 workers, 65. It's basically a full 2-base income against a full 3-base income right now. This is absolutely horrendous position for FanTaSy. He's going to have to pull out some really magical stuff if he wants to make a comeback out of this game.
Yeah, the nice thing is he does still have a couple of Siege Tanks. He still has a lot of Marauders left over, but he actually doesn't have that many medevacs, which I think can be a little bit frustrating because you can see that he was trying to produce some of those Vikings, trying to replenish and just get a little bit of map control, or sorry, not map control, but air control.
Air control,
and
yeah.
He just not opportunity to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in that fight, he had 0 air units in that fight, and he still managed to pull off the defense, but the harassment is just destroying him. Speaking of which, we've got Hellbats, and they are hanging out directly in his face. Fortunately, he does have the reinforcements hanging out there. Really good kind of a thing. If you're a Terran player out there, you want to, help against defense, just set your rally point in a really nice defensive location. So even if they come to get you, you'll have your reinforcements just sort of hang out there. And oh, I love this style. Oh my God, he's got the boosted medevacs available with the Hellbats in them, ready to go at any point in time. He'll drop all over this bio when he makes his attack.
Yeah, and he just moves into those Vikings, and down goes one medevac will eventually die. No? Yes, no, no. Oh man, this micro back and forth. FanTaSy is just like baiting him with that low health medevac now. It's actually a really cool maneuver to do.
Yep, aLive being really, really careful here. He doesn't want to throw away his advantage by being caught unsieged or being in a bad position or getting surrounded. He's being very aware, and all the while sending out another bit of harass. Really good presence of mind here. And ooh, FanTaSy unbeknownst, or beknownst indeed, as he's running over here, making a move towards this undefended base over in the section. But we do have a drop in the meantime, killing even more workers.
Oh my God,
it's insane right now. He's even gonna be able to pick up both Hellbats and move away. In the meantime, though, an attempt was made on that planetary, but it gets saved. That choke point is so difficult to deal with.
Oh my god. And look at this. Every single time that aLive manages to catch up, he has to be a little bit careful over here, but drops the Hellbats on top of these Marines and Marauders. The Marines get absolutely decimated. Marauders still alive for a little bit, but I mean, the medivacs have all been picked up. They are completely trapped, and the Vikings gonna reign supreme over there. That air superiority for aLive has just been granting him so many victories in this game.
Over and over again, and the big thing is just harass. FanTaSy's doing really well in these engagements for the most part. He's trading okay, he's making good moves positionally with his army, but during that time he keeps losing all of these workers. And oh, we have 2 ships passing at night. We have 1 army across the map, and both armies are in their enemy's territory. We have an attack. The evacuation of the workers has begun. No liftoff from the orbital. Do you know why? Because there's tons of Vikings just chilling there waiting to blow it out of the sky. In the meantime, he's making a push. FanTaSy is up in the top, trying to take this out. Takes down the first siege tank. His other siege tanks are in pretty good position. He's got air superiority for the moment, but the amount of damage that's coming out of aLive base, this base race here is absolutely nuts.
It's ridiculous right now, and FanTaSy's trying to do some nice little drop harassment over inside the production line, but that's the thing. aLive has secured a defense position in his production line, whereas actually, I should say, aLive has secured a defensive position in both production lines, his and his opponents. And that's not good for FanTaSy. FanTaSy is not going to be getting additional reinforcements in mass like aLive is.
Yeah, you know, they say that securing a position in your opponent's production or your opponent's terrain is checkmate. And when you secure both production, is that checkmate make? Is that a next level kind of a move here? You know,
you actually win 2 games in the best of 3 when you do that.
You actually just get 2 victories. Good job. More than the 2 victories. But yeah, this is, like you said, really tough position for FanTaSy. He's been behind most of the game. He's trying to make it happen. He's got a couple of moves over here, but it's not enough. aLive victorious here in our first game.
And aLive showing that, you know what, percentages, win rates, they don't mean enough when you get down to the nitty-gritty details, but how you control your army and how you play against your opponent in today's series, not some past series. How are you playing today? And aLive is playing pretty gosh darn well. I loved just, as you were saying, like that constant harassment with the Hellbats and everything, but just the army positioning and the constant macroing up behind everything he was doing. I think it was a point where, like you were saying, you know, BioPlayer wants to be mass expanding, getting up that not necessarily as cost-effective army, but the one that they can replenish very easily and quickly with a booming economy because they have that more mobile force. And we ended up seeing the opposite of that, where we had aLive sitting on 5 bases versus FanTaSy, who's sitting on 3.
Yep. And it's one of those things in a mirror matchup. They tend to be the most difficult matchups to get a comeback in, just because your opponent's working with basically the same stuff that you are. In this kind of a situation, FanTaSy went with a different unit composition, so it was, you know, a little bit different, but still, he fell behind really early on, and aLive did not allow him to get back in, basically. aLive did not make any mistakes that FanTaSy could capitalize on to let him get back into the game. Just totally solid play from aLive.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll see exactly what FanTaSy is going to be able to do to counterbalance this, as that was still just game number 1. It was a pretty cool macro game. Maybe making up a little bit for the fact that we didn't really have any macro games from the previous series tonight, but should be seeing some pretty cool stuff. And it was cool because it opened up as aggressive play from both those players sitting on that 1-1-1 opening. And what was interesting about it is neither of the players really managed to accomplish a lot with that initial aggression. And I'm kind of wondering, like, is that something that is just going to be pervasive throughout the series? Or was that sort of like an unfortunate, unlucky situation for both those players that they weren't able to make the big damage happen?
Well, I mean, they were doing the exact same thing at the exact same time, which is, you know, the odds of that are relative. Well, yeah, with a little bit of deviation, you know, with what was in the drop, but they both went for the drop first, then they followed up with the Viking. They both saw what was going on. It was pretty easily defended on both sides, and that was sort of what allowed it to normalize without a lot of damage.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. It's probably a little bit lower probability, but at the same time, 1-1-1, very, very common opening. There are still different deviations of it. You can still go for the Banshee opening. You can go for the Raven first opening. All kinds of different weird ways that you can kind of customize your 1/1/1 to your fitting. Pick out the 1/1/1 that is best for you and your significant other. But as we move on to the map, Terraform, we are going to be hopping into game number 2. aLive currently sitting up 1-0 in this best-of-5 series for Team Gravity Fight Night Tournament of Champions. If you guys are watching this on Team Liquid, I highly implore you to go ahead and click on through and head over to hitbox.tv, because I believe we should have another poll going up relatively shortly. It looks like right now our last poll says that most people are cheering for aLive. We got 63% cheering for aLive. So if you're a FanTaSy fan, go ahead and get your votes in as we hop into game number 2, spawning down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map. It is the blue Terran player representing Team Dead Pixels. It is FanTaSy.
And in the top right, our other Terran, all of his pixels have yet to be deceased. It's the red Terran, aLive.
What does that even mean? If your pixels are deceased.
Well,
what does a dead pixel mean in real life?
A dead pixel is in your monitor. If you have a pixel that like goes out, that's a dead pixel.
Yeah. But what does it mean if you are a dead pixel?
It means that in the grand scheme of things, in the network of all things, you're supposed to be a part of something that's bigger than you, but you've failed in that capacity and are utterly alone and miserable. It's really, you don't want to be a dead pixel, man. Yeah.
Wow. That got really sad and depressing. You know what's not sad and depressing? A gas first opening from aLive.
And that's how we bring it back. 100%.
That's how we bring it back from the brink of despair.
You know, and you know, if you play StarCraft, you don't want any dead pixels, and that's basically what both players are working with here. Very much aLive pixels, despite the fact that FanTaSy is indeed on Team Dead Pixels. He will be working with a fully functional monitor. Why would they choose that name? You know?
No, it's so appropriate that we're watching Dead Pixels versus aLive. It's Dead versus Dead or Alive. We're watching a game of Dead or Alive. This is Dead or Alive in 4027, the year 4027. This is
4027 the year of StarCraft? I didn't even. Or is that real? Or did you make that up?
It is now. It is now.
It is real. You know, that's one of those advantages about being a caster. If you say things,
nobody can argue with you.
Yeah, I mean, I can argue with you, but I would never do that. You know, and anyone in the chat, they actually, their voices aren't actually heard. So you know, we can say the Marines, you know, are actually tier 2 units now. They changed it. And
SCVs are the tier 1 units.
Yeah,
because they're that good with the extra health.
Think about it. You know, no one really expected that to be happening.
Well, I kind of want to talk about the usage of aLive's gas first.
Okay.
And I guess we can already see some of the implications of it. We have a 1/1 opening from FanTaSy as well, but you can see small little things of the starport being a lot further delayed, almost like 20, 25-ish seconds slower for FanTaSy. It also means that aLive is going to have a little bit of extra gas, I think, to maybe get out a slightly like faster cloak or something for his Banshee, but he's not going to be going for the Banshee. He's going for the Widow Mine. He's starting up a Hellion behind this and getting up a starport. He's just trying to go for a very fast drop and try and beat his opponent a little bit to the punch on this.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we do have FanTaSy gearing up for the opening with the Banshee instead. So not a whole lot of anti-air is going to be available for aLive here. He is building the spotter depot up in the top to deal with that. A little bit of supply block there coming out of aLive, but he's going to have everything pretty much lined up for this drop. And, I mean, he's got... Excuse me, we're going for the Raven first. A little bit more defensive play, perhaps expecting his opponent to be going out for that Banshee. In any case, Ravens, beautiful, wonderful, powerful units. If you did not know, build some Ravens. They're kind of fantastic.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about Ravens is that even though you can build them defensively, if you end up realizing that you don't need to keep it at home, you can actually use it offensively to just do auto turret harassment on your opponent. Auto turrets are surprisingly strong. And hey, you know what, auto turret? might be very, very useful in this situation as the Marines and the Widowmine are now unloading inside of FanTaSy's main
Widowmine
middle line.
is burrowing, and he's got the pull over here. It looks like, oh, and he unburrowed. Oh, I love the play. He actually unburrowed there.
Marines!
But the Raven, it actually kills. Oh my God, what a play. That's one of the advantages of opening with the Raven. Not only do you deal with the Banshee openers, but you also deal with the Widowmine openers as well, even putting his Widowmine up in the front defensively. Just a super, super defensive opening here from FanTaSy.
What a crazy, crazy aggressive bunker placement over here from aLive. It was a really cute play. I guess it just makes it harder for your opponent to finally move down and establish that natural expansion. All you need to do is put 4 Marines in there, and that's really not a huge commitment. Even got the Viking over there.
Viking. Yeah.
Yeah. Stop that Banshee from doing too much. It's going to be a really frustrating thing to break.
Because that was sort of the counterplay, right? You just move in with that Banshee and take out the SCV before it finishes the bunker, but that one Viking zoning it out long enough so the bunker gets up. So it's kind of an annoying thing, and it's going to allow aLive to get map control, and it's going to allow that map control to convert itself into an economic advantage with a faster expansion.
Yeah, but the first Banshee is now moving its way across the map to try and put on that kind of pressure. aLive is aware of that Banshee, but does he actually have any kind of preparations available to deal with it? He has the engineering break finished up, but where is the anti-air?
The anti-air is in the bunker across the map, Ravi. That's where it is, and the turret only starting just now.
Oh man, he's got a Viking, and Cloak has not been researched, so he should actually be able to deal with this. But that Banshee still kills off a decent number of workers. 5 workers killed. That's actually a pretty decent trade for the Banshee, I would say.
Yeah, it's not too bad. At this very moment, it's not too big a deal because he is super saturated in his main. But when he goes out to do that, the mainerding or the transferring of workers over into the side, it will, sort of manifest itself in that a little bit delayed of an economic advantage. Nice siege tank placement over here is going to zone out this bunker and allow him to take the expansion. And, it kind of evening things out with that worker harassment. He's been able to macro up pretty well here. Going for the Blue Flame Hellions is alive. So very likely we're going to see more factories be coming out of aLive.
Yeah, and aLive has a lot of Hellions over here.
Speaking of Hellions, oh my God.
Wow, almost gets some money hits.
That was a scary moment.
Well,
and
aLive,
it's a sort of, in this kind of situation, if you're, if you're a new player, this is where the game just ends for you. It's that razor's edge that FanTaSy is playing on that just, it keeps him in the game because his, execution is that clean, it's that fast, and both players playing on that level is really what, top level StarCraft is all about.
And Hellions trying to be dropped over in the main base. There were a lot of Vikings over the left-hand side that FanTaSy is moving out with and looking to do some nice harassment. I think that he's going for the auto turret harassment, Jack Attack. He's going to drop that auto turret in the middle line.
Auto turret, with an escort. This is sort of like his escort. Oh yes, we must escort the Raven into the. Ooh, and we have a potential. No, we're not going to stop that. We're just going to run out here and.
PDD going down.
Control for a second there. Yep, interesting.
I think that FanTaSy still gets a better end of that though, killing off I think 1 or 2 Vikings. His opponent, 1 Viking killed off, and might even get the Raven over here. Oh, that's a really nice.
Really big, nicely played. Raven, one of those units that are really, really important, really effective in the late game as they gain that energy. But that last engagement, losing a lot of his Vikings, it's really difficult to say who came up on top there. aLive being able to take this quick third base is a pretty powerful position, so he's going to keep that economic lead that he's had for most of this game now. And that was scouted technically by FanTaSy, not in the way that he actually sees it on his mini-map, but he saw the worker going in that direction. Ooh, really nice play with the Widowmine over here. Puts it in the, line of sight blocker. Does not target the middle of the pack, so it doesn't get quite as much damage as he would have liked to. But, look at this positioning here. He's going to drop some Hellbats up on the high ground, potentially. Wow. Nope, he's going to skip that, go all the way into the nowhere. Going all the way into the nowhere, not necessarily the greatest of moves, but he managed to pull it off. The defense from FanTaSy this game has been, he's learned his lesson, let's say. He has not lost nearly as many workers as last time.
Not quite as many.
No,
But-
not quite as many.
Oh, FanTaSy does a really nice job of, as you were saying, we've scouted out the third expansion was going to be built by that SCV. So he sent a single Hellion over to that third expansion, killed off the SCV that was building it, and only now is that third expansion finishing up. But oh, Hellion run by over here from aLive with Blue Flame. Can he get a lot of worker kills?
Nice.
He does some devastating morale damage to that engineering bay.
Yeah, those workers are not happy. Like, man, I'm in the yellow. And they're just really, pissed off. They start complaining about everything, and that can never be good. Morale very, very important. No, it's not. Sorry, that's not a mechanic.
I was thinking about there's a spell in Dungeons and Dragons it's like a bard spell called Cutting Words, and oh my god, these are more than cutting words right now. As it looks like FanTaSy gonna have to back off. He has more health on his Hellions, but he just has fewer of them, so he has to back up.
Yeah, I think you could have taken that a little bit further. I mean, you have the reinforcement Hellions here that are gonna finish things off, but a little bit tough. Both are on equal upgrades as far as the Hellions go for the time being. More harass coming out here from aLive, setting out another group of Hellbats, and we are getting down into this fantastic place that I love to live in, which is called Mech versus Mechland. The greatest place you could ever even be.
Oh man, yeah, a lot of factories being added on over here for aLive once again, but it is FanTaSy who's mixing things up and going for those factories as well. And this is a really interesting map to have this kind of mech versus mech battles, just because there's multiple pathways to get to your opponent's side of the map. But there's also this kind of cool, weird thing that'll happen with mech versus mech where both players are able to expand toward their opponent and they just get closer and closer and closer to each other. And things like these Hellbat drops become even harder to deal with because you have even less reaction time to try and deal with them.
Yep, and we do have the Hellbat drop being forwarded there. Nice wall of... not a wall of depots. Only works against... This is one of those special walls that only works against Hellions and other medium and large size units, but small units like SCVs can slip through up here in the supply depot area. So very fancy from FanTaSy, which we always like to see. And I want to point out right now that the tank count is 13-4. In favor of FanTaSy right now.
Yeah.
So really important thing in mech versus mech is that tank count, and FanTaSy has managed to be really defensive, get his factories out a lot sooner, and has cranked out a ridiculous, absolutely insane number of tanks. So he's going to be a really good position to push out when he gets maxed out, or if he wants to make a push right now.
Yeah, I mean, and that is the difference in supply right now. It's just siege tanks. And FanTaSy even kicks off a couple of those Hellions that are trying to make a run by over here from aLive. aLive sees
But the run by's on the other side
the...
as well. 8 workers down already, and they're lining up. There's 9, a couple hits. No, attack Marines, get the workers. 10. Oh my god, and 11. They just don't stop. aLive with the harassment. And they're still going. He's got a couple in the main, couple in the natural. 13 workers killed so far. He's just targeting them down, shift clicking on the workers over there. But in the meantime, as this gets cleaned up, have a major assault coming. No. We have a major assault going home for FanTaSy.
Oh man, this is the hard thing about TVT though, right? It's even if you have the larger army, you have to have good positioning when you push in. And oh my god, did he just juke and jive aLive? aLive is moving back toward his third expansion. Maybe not entirely sure where the army is anymore, but FanTaSy just kind of took his time, and now he's going to be able to get Siege up into that good position that he needed to.
Oh, this is absolutely brutal. It's really, really difficult to deal with over here as far as air control is concerned. We do have advantage toward FanTaSy as long as he can get that PDD down. An instant lift up from aLive. He knows this position is lost. And FanTaSy behind this, double expanding. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Planetary Fortresses at both of those, but oh man, is he going to have time to finish up either of those expansions? The army for aLive is kind of trying to decide like where to go. Hellion's doing some nice counter harassment, but Siege Tank should be able to deal with that at the same time. We might be seeing the big army engage in as the medevacs are dropping Hellbats on top of the Siege Tank, trying to do as much damage as possible. Oh my god!
Flanking with mech right now.
The rocks are killed off though. He can't get over.
That's it. GG.
Oh man.
FanTaSy closes it out. aLive had no hopes. Getting blasted by siege tanks from both sides. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. FanTaSy just flanked aLive with mech. That was very pretty.
I mean, medevacs move pretty gosh darn fast, Jack Attack. When you have the units coming in from the right, the army had already been on the left, and then he just finishes it off by dropping the Hellbats. That one actually wasn't even a flank. Because, like, saying it was just a flank doesn't do justice to the fact that he was not only coming in from the left and the right, but then he was also just coming in on top. Like, he was just dropping his army on top. That was just
like
like
a three-dimensional flank. He was even flanking from above as well. It was like
exactly. He was like an amoeba
flank.
just absorbing the army of aLive into his concave. He was like, your army, the corpse of your army is now a part of me.
Yes, that is literally what just happened. You heard it first. That's a 3D amoeba flank of mech from FanTaSy.
But here's the thing, Jack Attack, is that was game number 2. We're tied up 1-1. And for those who don't know, Team Gravity Fight Night has a curse. It has a curse that's actually a blessing for the viewers. The curse is that we always have either really close games or really long and very drawn-out series that end up being close-ish games, but the scores are at least close. Usually either the scores are close or the games are close or both. It's one of the three, though. It's always one of the three. And right now, we're already having a series that's relatively close. Series tied up. We're moving to game number 3. We're going to see who's going to be able to take momentum back in this series as we hop in and introduce the players. Spawning up here in the top left-hand corner of the map, top of the blue Terran player representing Team Dead Pixels. It is FanTaSy.
And in the bottom right, he just got 3D amoeba flanked by tanks. How is he going to get his way out of that into a victory this game? It's the Red Terran aLive.
Do you think that aLive has played Portal?
Why do you say that? I'm not sure.
Because I mean, there is a song quite literally called aLive from Portal. It's like the ending theme song for the credits. When you were like, I think, have you not heard that song? I'm trying to remember like some of the lyrics. It's basically the computer saying like, oh, this is like good because you know the computer is the end boss that you end up killing off. Spoiler alert on like an 8-year-old or 10-year-old game, but the ending is the computer singing a song to you saying this was a triumph, and I got a lot of data from this, and here's the thing, I'm a computer, so like when you're dead, I'm still gonna be alive, and when you're like a corpse is rotting, I'm still gonna be alive, and when the bugs are literally defecating on your corpse, I'm still going to be alive. And it's literally just like that's the song. Is just that computer being like, well,
wow,
yeah, but I'm gonna outlive you. So, have fun with that. Like, so I feel like that should be his like theme song.
Mentality going into it.
It's
like
the
you're
song
gonna
is
drop me,
called
but
Alive.
I'll still be alive.
Exactly.
You know, you're gonna harass me.
When
I'm
you're
still
dropping,
alive.
I
Going
will
to the good fight.
Still alive.
You know what?
Exactly.
Parody upcoming. Here we go.
Yo.
Tribute to aLive.
Let's see that Jack Attack parody. All right. Well, we have a Reaper opening, which is a little bit different than usual from what we've seen so far.
Relatively rare in TVZ. You see him on the 4-player maps just to make sure you get a good scout, and are oftentimes where you see the Reapers. And this was even an 11 gas Reaper, so pretty aggressive. Aggressive and aggressive as well. All the aggressions are coming out from aLive into the directions. Progressive, regressive, just all of them.
It's both progressive and regressive.
Yeah, it's really so powerful. It's a paradox. You know, Sun Tzu's up in here, dropping the paradoxical knowledge, and 2 Reapers coming out so far.
Yeah, gonna be waiting for the second Reaper too. And I want to note, FanTaSy is not really scouting besides for any kind of proxies that could be coming out. So this might catch him a bit off guard. It's the, I'm going to make I'm gonna go for this build, but I'm actually gonna hold off and not reveal that I'm going for the build at the normal time. Normally, you just charge in with the first Reaper, but by holding back, FanTaSy might be a little bit less prepared for this.
Yeah, well, when you can get the Reapers in a pretty good position, you can actually take the fight to Marines pretty well. As long as you pull back and heal in time, you can run in, deal with one. It looks like he's going to be looping around in this direction, avoiding the more predictable path. Ooh, going to stop the production of the Starport, going to slow things down tech-wise. He's even going to get a couple of worker kills.
Wow.
And he's already up to 3 worker kills.
4
It does
kills?
take 3 volleys. Oh, is he going to get out of there? No, one of them is definitely going to die. What about the other one? Oh, wow. He even takes out, look at that, 4 workers and a Marine for his troubles. That,
What a value opening. Yeah, that Reaper opening has seriously paid off so far. As long as he's prepared for the Banshee harassment, which he's very much aware of and has scouted out now, but his Starport is going to be much further delayed. There is actually even a chance that I think the Vikings should be popping out right around the time that the Banshee gets to his base, though.
Well, the other thing too is he's building Widow Mines and Marines. He knows this is coming, so he's building, you know, things that shoot up right away. So he should be in a good position. Otherwise, oh man, this Reaper's so annoying, running around here, maybe even getting another worker kill. But the important part is he's scouting this. He's making sure it's happening. He knows everything that's going on over here.
Yes, popped in, seen. Okay, Tech Lab wasn't researching Cloak. You can tell those by those small little animations on the Tech Lab, and that means that he doesn't have to invest into making a bunch of turrets for the detection. He actually doesn't need to, even though he has the engineering bay and he has the opportunity to. You can see he's not doing it because he doesn't. He can save a couple of those extra minerals through the scouting of that Reaper.
Yep, Banshee coming down into the natural, so that Widow Mine placement was incorrect. Couldn't mind game out the way that the Banshee was coming in. He does have a couple of units in position here. The Viking is out in time to chase this away. No Cloak as well. This Banshee is going to get maybe a couple of kills on the... Oh my god, and he even repaired? Did that just happen?
Oh,
my god.
that is
that
so
was
sick.
fantastic.
That SCV has a 1 hit point. All you have to do is repair a little bit and you save it. But unfortunately, I think that SCV just ended up dying to the Marine cushion. But a really cool movement from FanTaSy, by the way. Just like the Marine follow-up. Nobody expects the Marine follow-up.
Nobody expects the Marine follow. Nobody. And nobody expects the... Oh, you went Banshee? I'll go Banshee, but later and with Cloak, and you'll never see it coming.
Right?
Yeah, you know, 100%. But the problem is FanTaSy's already got a Raven out. He's building Vikings. He's getting into that potentially mechanized area with the double factories, and beginning to move out with his first bit of harassment with these Hellions. But all in all, pretty nice position here for aLive to start off the game.
Yeah, if I didn't know better, I would think that aLive was like playing that Hearthstone expansion, man. He's been going mech for all of these games just so gosh darn often. And he's going to be able to kill off the SCV building that 3rd expansion, get a scout off and say, oh, okay, you're looking to just play this out nice and safe. You're not going for any kind of big push-ins anytime soon. I can just kind of sit back, relax, and macker up my good old mech army. Maybe he just has to be a little bit careful about that Banshee that's moving across the map.
One big thing, though, is that we still don't see a 3rd CC from FanTaSy. That is not a huge tell at this stage in the game, but the longer that... Oh, there we go. Now we have the 3rd CC. Yeah. He's building it up. So he does have that bit of a later... Ooh, possibility here for aLive to delay that expansion. He does notice it and takes it down. So FanTaSy falls further behind in economy again. Another time, another series.
Well, nice little Widow Mine hit. Taking out some of those Hellions once again. aLive just really loving keeping those Widow Mines burrowed in really odd and off locations. But Raven over here for FanTaSy going to be able to clean that up. And actually, the Vikings managed to catch that Banshee. The Banshee, it delayed that 3rd for a little bit, but Banshee with Cloak getting taken out that easily, that's a little bit unfortunate. Actually, wait a second. The Banshee did have Cloak, right? Because it could have cloaked against the Vikings that were chasing it down.
Yeah, I think he was. I think he was just looking somewhere else.
Must have.
Oh no, Cloak got canceled.
Oh, okay.
Cloak never happened. Cloak got canceled. That is what happened.
I see. Well, not gonna have Cloak, but still gonna have a nice little window of opportunity to try and make some damage happen with these Hellions. But oh man, FanTaSy with a single Hellion scout out on the map, I'm gonna be able to anticipate this move in. And even though he doesn't have quite as many Hellions, he does have the additional backing up of that siege tank that could help out a little bit. But actually, I don't know if it's enough.
I've never seen Hellions kill a siege tank before, so check that off my bucket list. Not something that you expect to happen. The Hellion, really strong at killing units that are light. The siege tank, being an armored unit, is not in any way light. It is quite heavy. I believe siege tanks weigh anywhere between 300,000 and 300,000 tons, technically speaking.
Very much so, but aLive is still darting around with those Hellions and looking for maybe some additional siege tanks to pick off, but more likely than not, just any kind of additional Hellions that are maybe a little bit out of position. But oh, he might actually find sieged up siege tank. Not going to be jumping onto it though. Not a fight that he wants to take.
Yeah, and that's that's one of the important things. Even with aggression, even with aggressive players. It's really, really important. The thing that you see almost always in very strong professional gamers like the two of these is patience. Patience is an incredibly important aspect to have, and aLive not jumping the gun there, running in like that.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense that aLive is not jumping the gun. I mean, Dead Pixel's patience is quite literally one of his teammates, so of course he would have patience.
Good point.
But
Good point.
These Vikings being a little bit impatient and just saying, well, it's time for us to get involved in the fight. We're tired of waiting. We're actually going to go after a lot of this stuff. You might even be able to nail down that armory upgrade. Oh, well, you might be able to kill off some SCVs that return a little bit too soon. FanTaSy has been doing this time and time again, just returning the SCVs super early to the mineral line.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's an overconfidence thing, but in the meantime, using this out of position moment in time to move all of these Hellions next to these workers, and that's right, we've got Hellions killing tanks yet again on Team Gravity Fight Night, and also attacking the command center. But he's got this fantastic position, oh my god, in the middle of the second and the third base. Really tough to deal with here. These siege tanks are not even being sieged up. All those workers are being dead. 22 workers. He's already down to 2 base economy completely. And they're moving into the middle line. This is absolutely atrocious. GG. aLive, with the death of workers, defeats FanTaSy.
And I've got to just hand it to aLive. I think that that game looked like it could still go either way. Neither here nor there. But that positioning down at the low ground between the natural and the third, that is just such important positioning to make sure you're able to defend. And it was because of that Viking landing in the main base that just pulls the entire army of FanTaSy completely out of position and allowed him to siege up over there and allow him to just take absolute dominance over that match. So really, really well done. It almost seems
like a mistake, right? He's landing all these Vikings, he's losing all this value. It's like, oh man, what's going on?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like you look at the mini map and you see, the positional strategy that's happening, sacrificing the few for, the many, and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, aLive takes a 2-1 lead in the best-of-5 series. It's 1 game away from his victory and moving on to the finals, where he'll guarantee himself at least $50 in Team Gravity Fight Night. Now, of course, the loser of this series will still get the 3rd, 4th place winnings of $25, so that's still half of a StarCraft account for Legacy of the Void. But really, all the players are going to be shooting for that $150 for 1st place, and aLive is not going to be in any exception as we go ahead and jump in and introduce the players and spawn down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map on top of the blue Terran player representing Team D-Pix. It is D-Pix FanTaSy.
And spawning in the top left portion of our screen, we also have another Terran player. This one's red. His name is aLive.
Check Attack, there's 2 things that will never stop being funny in StarCraft.
Okay.
Number 1, Reapers in the Legacy of the Void using their, grenade ability and making units jump up into the air. That will never stop being funny. 2 years from now, I'll still be laughing my butt off every time I see that. Second thing is making jokes about D-Pix.
Yeah, you know, and I appreciate that you challenge me as a caster to be able to, you know, laugh inside myself for a moment and then come out and do the player announcement. I really didn't think I could do it, but I said, you know, I'm going to strive to make an actual
You did a
player
good
announcement
job.
without laughing.
I'm proud of you. I'm
Thank you.
really proud of you. You've
my
made
hero.
great strides as this. Oh, well, thank you. But we don't actually have hero in this game. We have
No,
aLive
unfortunately we
and
don't.
FanTaSy. And FanTaSy, I believe, in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, went for the gas first.
Yes, he did. So
And
he'll
he's going to
going
be up
for
against...
what we've been seeing.
Ooh, he's up against a CC first. That is...
Well, so far, aLive has been a player that plays well and just generally succeeds by having an economic advantage. In this series, he's almost always the player with the economic advantage and going for that edge and utilizing it and pushing it. The one game where he couldn't get an economic edge on Terraform, where, you know, FanTaSy was able to max out so quickly before him, was the game that he lost. So going for the CC first on, again, one of the best maps to go greedy on because of that really small choke point to wall off. It's pretty nice. It's a pretty nice move here, and it's going to put aLive in a really nice position as far as the openers go.
Yeah, we'll see exactly how aLive can deal with whatever kind of aggression that FanTaSy decides to throw out at him. Of course, going for that gas first means that things like the factory are going to be finishing up a heck of a lot faster. Especially since, think about this. aLive has not even started a factory, he hasn't started a reactor or anything with that gas yet. He's gotten up his command center, sure, but at the same time, FanTaSy has already started his starport, it's almost halfway finished. He's going to be able to get out very, very quick Banshees. And we'll see how much damage they can do, because I don't even think there's going to be that many Marines available for aLive.
Interesting thing, FanTaSy has not yet sent a scout out, so he doesn't even know where his opponent is for the time being. When you go for this kind of a play, as the CC first player, you know that you're in the defensive mode right from the get-go. You know that it's most likely that your opponent is going to be coming after you with an attack. So, you know, you prepare with that. You know, invest in the things like the bunker and potentially some other static defense if you can't get up in that time. And he's got the reactor coming down. He's got a few Marines just to start off, just to keep that economic lead in place. And that's one of those things. An economic lead is something that benefits you in the long term. He has to survive long enough to make it worth the sacrifice.
Yeah, we'll see if he can actually manage to do that, as the Hellion has finally scouted out his opponent. He's going to know where to send that Banshee, but oh my god, actually, SCV does move in and scouts out the Widowmine as well as some of the Marines over there. I think that he also saw that there was no natural expansion, and because of that, he throws down a scan and sees the starport, sees the factory, sees the barracks, and sees the Banshee popping out. So he should know just about everything that's going on.
Oh man, he just dropped mules. He has almost no energy on either of these command centers. This is going to be a very tough situation. He is building a tech lab right now. He has already prepared himself as far as the engineering base goes. The turrets are coming down as well. Viking coming out, so it'll be turrets, Vikings, and Marines for this initial defense here.
Yep, no missile turret going up in the nat or main mineral line just quite yet. Okay, actually just gets started. And a missile turret at the production line, or production, I guess the production facilities for the actual units, gets finished up at the exact perfect time. And this Banshee, struggling a little bit to find the opening. He's going to find one over by this gas geyser, but I mean, it is in vision range of that missile turret. It's going to be detected. Well, at least for a little bit it was. And he has a scan.
Well, yeah. He really doesn't want to waste the scan if he can, but unfortunately he is going to have to. Chases it into the loving arms of the missile turret, which gets the kill. And overall, after all that, after the big attack, we're about even on workers, but the expansion advantage is in the favor of aLive. Oh, but we got a little bit more harassment here. He did go ahead and build that second Banshee. Whenever you go for a cloak, it's very, very unlikely that you only go for one Banshee, because you really want to get as much value as you can out of that cloak upgrade.
And, you know, surprisingly enough, I think that FanTaSy has at least evened up the worker counts, despite the fact that I don't think he's actually killed off that many workers. He's killed off 7 so far, which is a pretty decent number, but surprisingly less than I thought he would, with such like an early investment delaying that natural.
Yeah, you would expect that aLive would have a lot more workers right now, but it's just slight. FanTaSy did get his expansion up in a reasonable amount of time, so he's got a nice little arc here preventing any sort of attacks from coming in. And weirdly enough, FanTaSy is just ahead in supply right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to actually like make sense of everything that's just happened and how that's actually working out. How FanTaSy is so far up a good 15 or 20 supply in army. He's got his 3rd CC finished up already, turning into an orbital, like nicely timed out. The same with aLive. And I guess he's just been building up a lot of these Hellions and Marines, whereas I think that aLive has been adding on. Well, I guess he doesn't actually have any siege tanks. So where is that army supply for aLive? Like, what has aLive been doing?
Hellions are actually 4 times the fastest thing that you can get, the least amount of time, most supply you can get in the least amount of time for turns. So as far as that goes, investing into Hellions is going to bloat your supply just a little bit. Not as crazy as Roaches will, but just a little bit, especially concerning time and not cost as far as minerals go. But we do have a bit of a scan here. He's feeling out what's going on, and you know, we're looking at yet another mech from FanTaSy, which is always exciting. This time we're going to have the bio from aLive, and economic advantage going to FanTaSy, oddly enough.
Yeah, kind of funny. It's just a complete role reversal, and aLive does have a single Banshee sitting on the right-hand side of the map, looking for the golden opportunity to move in and try and get some damage done. Now, Supply Depot should be able to spot out this Banshee, but this Banshee does have Cloak, and there's not exactly a whole lot of missile turrets over here in this main base. In fact, I would say that there are quite literally 0 missile turrets. But there is a Raven somewhere out on the map for FanTaSy. Where is it? It's in the natural expansion.
And it's taking its sweet time getting over here. We are up to 9 kills, 10 kills. Absolutely crazy. This is aLive fighting back. He's saying, I will have the economic lead. But yet he does not really. It's all that damage, and still FanTaSy is about even with him coming in with his punch here. They are going blow for blow, back and forth. And, you know, we've seen Hellions kill a lot of things this game. But it would be kind of crazy if we saw Hellions kill an orbital command. They should just kind of hang out here. Ooh, they could blast those. Oh, all of that bio getting shredded into bits. That's kind of one of those things about Hellions, is that when you get up to these high numbers and the splash damage starts overlapping in that line sense, you can get up, do a little quick blast, kill every single Marine, and get out of there.
Yeah, and at the same time, the second Banshee over there from the other side of the map for aLive does get taken out, but he takes out a lot of the workers for FanTaSy. Surprisingly enough, though, those Hellions, I think that they just managed to even everything up. As the end of the day, FanTaSy has also killed off 11 workers for himself, and is somehow ahead.
Yep,
killed off less
every
workers,
single time.
Still ahead, somehow.
You know, that's FanTaSy for you. It's like, oh, you went command center first? I'm gonna have more workers than you. It's like, oh, okay, you killed a bunch of my workers? I'm gonna have more workers than you. It's like, well,
I know, I love that. You've gone command center first and also have killed less workers than I have, but I'm still ahead of you in workers. It's like, what? How?
You know, I feel like we can only chalk it up to like this perfection of macro and mechanics that you know, a player like FanTaSy coming from Brood War is going to have. You know, maybe little blips in supply blocks we've seen from aLive and things like that. No such blips appearing in the play of FanTaSy.
But aLive does still have one big thing going for him, and that's going to be those upgrades. +1 missile, or not missile attack, this is not
Oh my god,
+1 is pushed up, but oh my god!
Holy
These
crap.
Hellbats are doing...
Workers killed, and he's just going for it. aLive just moving across the map. He says, all right, forget about it. I don't have an economy, but I have a giant army. It's directly in your face. What are you going to do about that, FanTaSy? And we're about to find out. A couple of 100 Seeker missiles coming down. Going to kill off one of the tanks. He's moving forward. Another tank down, and the supply depot ramp is up. Another tank gets killed off. none of these tanks have been able to get any damage off at all. In the meantime, we do have Hellbats doing their thing in the production line, but aLive is looking in a really great position here, has critically, come in at the exact right moment. He's on top of the production facilities, tanks going down to bio. Everything is falling apart for FanTaSy.
And at the other side of the map, I mean, FanTaSy is sure doing some nice damage with the Hellbats, but they're just Hellbats. They're not going to be killing off the buildings. They're just going to be halting mining, whereas you look at what aLive is doing, he's actually murdering everything left and right, including the production facilities. This is definitely going to favor him. As GG gets called, FanTaSy taps out, aLive taking the 3-1 victory.
Beautiful. Just fantastic killer instinct there. Being behind, knowing exactly what's happening and saying, now is the time to hit. And just solidifying that with these huge drops. So much supply was across the map for FanTaSy that he knew at that moment in time he was just going to go for it. And he made it work and really just absolutely crushing through with his bio. Like I said, none of those tanks even got a shot off.
Yeah, it was really, really well played over there from aLive. And I think aLive, in some ways, just looking at like the overall matchup statistics, was probably the underdog going into this series versus FanTaSy, who's considered just a TBT mastermind, a TBT god. But aLive, really, really solid play and showing both wins with mech as well as bio. So varied play as well.
Yeah, absolutely. FanTaSy is, not a player to be pigeonholed. He has a great breadth of strategy that he can choose from, and he can do it all. And, he's been around a long time showing that he can. Great games put up by him, but in the end, it's aLive, a player that we don't really hear too much from, compared to FanTaSy, taking that game, taking that match, rather.
It really reminds me about the way that aLive became really well known in the StarCraft scene back in the day. It was quite literally people saying, hey, by the way, I guess aLive has just like consistently gotten like third place through like somewhere between like fourth place to second place at like all of these tournaments. I was like, wait a second, aLive is an unbelievably consistent player. He doesn't get first, but he gets unbelievably high placements. And it's like, aLive is like the player that's really freaking good, but nobody actually remembers how good he is, and nobody actually respects how good he is. That's how aLive became known as a player, for how unknown of a player he was. And it's like that reminder, like, wait a second, aLive is a really good player. Even now, he's still a really good player.
It was actually funny. I was talking to Andrew in the house before this was getting going. He was, oh, who's playing tonight? I was told him it's like aLive, and he was like, aLive? It's like, he's still playing? I was like, oh yeah, he's still playing.
aLive is still alive.
aLive is still alive, staying alive, keeping it alive. But I believe, if I could be so bold, I think we're moving on into a very, very short break before we get into our final matchup of the day, which is gonna be aLive versus Hydra. It's going to be cool. I'm very excited.
It's going to be a super duper awesome TVZ. During the break, I want to implore everyone to go ahead and check out our sponsors. That would, of course, be Hitbox. Go ahead and consider registering an account, as they are the ones that are bringing this whole broadcast to you guys. G2A, if you want to subscribe to us on Hitbox, then you can get a $5 coupon for a G2A. And of course, their spawning tool provides a ton of really, really awesome analytics on just the players, and has been super duper helpful. And of course, you guys can learn a lot from Spawning Tool, the website, and improve your own play. And of course, our last sponsor, Oh Fuck You, who has just been a super duper awesome member of the community. We'll be back in a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with the finals of Team Gravity Fight Night Tournament of Champions number 3.